For a lot of people who are autistic, it's their experience of what is called autistic burnout that leads them to discovering that they have autism. For me, I experienced my autistic burnout years ago, and it was only a couple of months ago that I discovered that I do have autism. However, it was the burnout I experienced, which at the time I did not know was burnout, that eventually led me down the path of self discovery, which of course led me to eventually discovering that I have autism. It has been a long journey. I've discovered a lot about myself, I've improved myself a lot, and I would just like to share with you my autistic burnout story so that if someone is listening right now and they're experiencing what I experienced or some of what I experienced when I had my burnout, they would be able to recognize it as burnout in a way that I could not, and would maybe be able to get help or arrive at a suitable conclusion much earlier. So the first thing I want to talk about is what is autism. For anyone who is just hearing it for the first time or who has heard about it but has preconceived notion that is inaccurate, the way I used to, I would just like to say this in short. The way I like to describe autism is it's a difference. It's a processing difference. It means if you're autistic or if you're neurodivergent in general, it means that your brain is wired differently from the brains of people who are not autistic. Which means that you perceive the world differently, you experience the world differently, you process information differently. That's basically what it is. It's neither wrong nor right. It's just is. It is not an intellectual disability. It is just a processing difference. Now, the second thing is what is masking or what is camouflaging? Camouflaging or masking is what a lot of autistic people do. And it is basically hiding or suppressing who you are, your personality traits, the way you would like to express yourself, your reactions to things, your thoughts about things, your ideas, your views on the world, basically everything about yourself. You are suppressing your being internally and putting on a mask or camouflaging and becoming the way other people are, becoming like other people. It's because from a very young age, we've learned that the way we are is insufficient or is problematic in some way, and the way other people are seems to be better. And so we learn to take on the persona of those other people who seem to come across as okay or great to other people so that we can also be accepted socially. I used to observe people a lot and I would talk the way they talk. I would take on their accents. I would take on their mannerisms. I would use the words they use, and I would I loved watching movies a lot, and I would take on the accents of my favorite movie characters. I would use words they use. I would behave the way they behave. I would just do things the way they do things. I would express myself, react to things in the way those movie characters react to things, and it was just natural for me. I did not sit down and think about what I was doing. I did not do it deliberately. It just happened. Now, masking takes a lot of energy and it takes a toll on ourselves, not just on our emotional selves, but on our physical selves as well. And when we do that for a very long time, in my case, even my earliest memories of myself include me learning to mask in different little ways. Because those earliest memories that I have of myself, they told me that there were certain things that happened that told me that what I was insufficient or problematic, and I had to be a different way. So I was already learning to mask from a very young age, as young as maybe 3 years old, that I can remember, maybe even around 2 years old. And so when we do that for a very long time, it takes its toll on us. And eventually it leads to chronic burnout, which is what is referred to as autistic burnout. A lot of autistic people experience this burnout at some point in their lives. I experienced it when I was 21 years old. I was in my final year of vet school, and I did not know, like I said earlier, I did not know it was what was called burnout. I did not know what I thought. Along the way, over time, when I would look back on it, I thought it was a kind of emotional breakdown, which it was, but it was actually autistic burnout. Now, autistic burnout, think of it as you suppressing yourself, suppressing everything about yourself, like I explained earlier. And at some point, when you keep suppressing things about yourself like that in totality, your psyche, your body is going to rebel. And for some people, their bodies will rebel in the form of physical health challenges. For some other people, their bodies will rebel in the form of emotional health challenges. For some people, it's a combination of both. In my case, it was a combination of both, but it was mostly emotional health challenges that I came down with. And that was why I thought it was an emotional breakdown. I experienced the burnout full on when I was 21 years old. But a few years earlier, I would say when I was about 16, 17 years old, I had started experiencing signs. And I did not know there were signs at the time. Because again, one of the things I had been conditioned to do was ignore myself, ignore my feelings, ignore just things that were happening within me. And it's a combination of ignoring but also not being aware on time, which is something that a lot of autistic people experience. You don't get aware, or I don't feel aware of things that are happening within me, that introspection. I don't feel it until it gets to a critical point. So I did not know. And even when I experienced some things that were uncomfortable for me, I ignored it. I just thought about it as one of those things. Now, what am I talking about? I used to experience a lot of anger, like rage, like actual rage, over things that people would, when I would erupt in anger, when I would erupt over things, people would look at it as not something that would call for that kind of reaction. But I would feel the anger deeply inside of me. I would really feel it. And I would say things sometimes I would walk away because I that was how I knew to respond to things. That was how I knew to express the anger I was feeling. Right. And for some other people, it could be a lot worse than that. For people who are very physical, it could turn into maybe throwing objects or, breaking things or hitting people for that matter. But it does happen. Obviously, that's not right, but it does happen. I also used to experience bouts of sadness and what I would refer to as depression. And it would come and it would go in waves over time. I also used to experience anxiety a lot, but the anxiety I used to experience was just the anxiety I'd always experienced my entire life. I don't remember a time in my life when I was not anxious about one thing or another. Things that had to do with me, things that had to do with other people around me. I was always anxious about things one way or another. Like I remember having anxiety from a very young age. So even when I was experiencing this anxiety when I was about 17 years old, thereabouts, I did not take it as anything because I thought it was just the way I was and it was the way other people were. Okay. So these were some of the things. I also used to experience physical health challenges like allergies. Um, you could be fine today and tomorrow you just wake up with a sore throat. And even instead of the sore throat to go after like 2 or 3 days, it would, turn into runny nose and then it would turn into cough. You could be coughing for like 2 months and people make comments and things of that sort. I had skin problems as well, the skin problems that refused to go anywhere, which was just like it was really uncomfortable for me. So I had all these things. I also had other health challenges. So there were all these things that I'd been experiencing maybe about 4 to 5 years before I finally experienced the autistic burnout. Now, when the autistic burnout did happen, what did I experience? I don't know exactly when it started, but because I was in my final year of vet school, it was only natural that I would start thinking about what came after. This is where I can trace the problem back to. I started thinking about what would come after where I'd never thought about it before. And people would ask questions. Everybody was figuring out what they were going to do after. Everybody was talking about what they were going to do. If they were going to academia, they would go and open their clinics. They would work for this person, that person. People were already making connections. People were networking, things of that sort. They were figuring things out very well. I, on the other hand, tried to figure things out. I tried to think about what I liked. I did not know what I liked. I tried to think about, and I knew what I did not like. I knew which specialty of vet medicine I did not like. I did not know which one I liked. I tried to figure out what was appealing to me. I could not think of any. And then I thought, okay, maybe outside of vet medicine, maybe in another field, I could figure out something that would bring me pleasure in a different field. I could not figure anything out. Tried to think about what my talents were, what my passions were. I could not think of anything. So that started bothering me. Okay, it started affecting me, even though I did not know it was already affecting me. I would think about it, think about it, and then I would push it away and go distract myself with other things. And then over time, I started realizing that I would those bouts of sadness would come more and more frequently. They would come in waves, they would stay for a long time, and then they would go. And then after some time, this wasn't even something I planned. I started withdrawing. I started isolating myself from time to time. It was just again the feeling, the impulse came in waves. It would come in a wave. I would need to isolate myself, and then it would go, and I would mix with my friends again. Even to the extent that many of my friends started making comments like, Zayn is she's always just like on her own during this point, like she doesn't even mix with us and all of that. And I could not explain what was going on. I just knew I had to. And up till today, one of the things I do whenever I experience a shutdown or I experience that exhaustion that comes with masking for a long time, one of the things that I do instinctively is to isolate or to withdraw. That's just one of the ways I handle things. Okay, so I used to do that, and then I started realizing that I would wake up in the morning. I could be fine at night. I would go to bed, wake up in the morning, and I would feel just this wave of sadness and anger. And I hated my life. I hated waking up. Like I would literally wake up in the morning and my first thought would be, I hate my life. Why do I have to get up this morning? But I had to get up because I was in the final year of vet school and there was a lot of work to do. So those would be my thoughts. And of course I would get up and I would go do what I have to do. But while I'm going to class, while I'm going to school, in my head, it used to feel like, because of the anger and the sadness and just that depression, I used to feel like I was screaming in my head. I literally remember I would feel like I was screaming in my head. And I did not know why I was screaming, but I could not scream. I could not, nothing came out. So I was smiling on the surface. I looked okay on the surface, but I was screaming in my head. I don't know, like I've never heard anyone talking about this, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who has experienced something like that. It was horrible. It was really horrific. And I used to experience that nearly every day at some point. Again, I could not tell anyone about it because I did not feel like anyone would understand me, and I was afraid I would be dismissed as just being dramatic or anything. Plus, I was really the kind of person, I'm still the kind of person who just has to always figure things out for herself. I've always been that way. From a very young age, I learned that if I had problems, I had to figure the answer by myself. And if I told people, they would not, help me solve the problem, or they would just make things worse, but make me feel worse about it, which I definitely did not want. So that was one of those things that I also had to figure out by myself. And that was one of the reasons I did not tell anyone about it. And then after a while, the skin problems came back. The skin problems had always been, like, they've been there, like I said, like 4 to 5 years before. But this time they came back full force. And then the allergies came and they refused to go. And I started feeling exhausted all the time. I was feeling exhausted and it showed. When you have skin problems, you've got health issues, you've got a lot of anger, you've got a lot of emotional distress. It shows, even if you cannot see it. It shows. And I remember many people would ask me, like some of my lecturers would ask me, like, why do you look this way? To like I would look well put together, but I realized they were talking about something in my eyes, something maybe they could see because they were older people, things that people of my age could not see. They could see. And they would ask me, why do you look this way? And I did not know why. And the only thing I could say was, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. And I just chalked it up. And I think they did. They just chalked it up to maybe the exhaustion of having too much work, with projects and things of that sort, having to write, to put together a project work and all of that. And That was it. I just said I'm exhausted. I used to say I'm exhausted a lot because I used to feel exhausted all the time. I used to sleep a lot, like a lot. I would spend maybe like half the weekend sleeping. I used to, in the past, I used to enjoy going to the swimming pool to swim, but at that point, I just stopped it because I did not have the energy or the time to go on weekends. I was always so exhausted. I did not have the energy or the time to do things that I enjoyed doing. I was always exhausted. So if I had the time during the weekend, I would just sleep. During the day, I would sleep. During the night, I would sleep. I used to sleep a lot, but that did not ease my distress and that did not make me feel better in any way. And then after a while, and this was what really made me become very scared. After a while, I realized that I would be maybe sitting in the lounge with some of my friends, maybe during lunch break, and we could be having a conversation, and all of a sudden, I would just feel this strong wave of sadness and this strong urge to cry, and I would start crying. I would start crying and I would not be able to stop it. And I am the kind of person, I've always been the kind of person who would never ever cry in public. Even in private, I make a concerted effort not to ever cry. And to cry in public, it was mortifying to me. And I would try so hard to stop crying, but I would not be able to stop. I did not know why I was crying. I did not know. I could not control the crying. I could not stop it. It would just come whenever and stop whenever it wanted to stop. Right. And I remember some of my friends would ask me, like, why are you crying? Like, you're crying, why are you crying? And I'll be able, like, I don't know why I'm crying, I cannot stop it. It was so horrific. And I would run, sometimes I would run to the restroom to put myself together. And sometimes I would need to go to a class. So I would go like crying and all to the class. And then when I would get into the class and I have to start taking notes, the crying would stop on its own, right? Because obviously, maybe because I have something else to distract me and all of that. So it was horrible. Sometimes, some friends, I remember one time like that, the crying started. I was walking with a friend, a very good friend, by the way. The crying started like that, and it was like you could see it on my face. And he was like, "You're crying." I was like, "I don't know why. I don't know what's going on." And he just gave me a hug, and that was so nice. That was really, really nice. I can never forget that. I can never ever forget that. Look, I'm just going to pause here. If you have a friend or you have somebody in your life who is going through something, and you don't know what they're going through and you don't know how to help them, don't say things because you don't know what can, especially if that thing isn't something nice. Don't say it. Don't try to tell them what to do. That can only make things worse. You could just give them a hug if they are open to it, if you know they're open to it. If not, just be there for them. Okay, that can be one of the best things you could ever do, and they will never ever forget it. Okay, I still remember to this day that my friend who gave me that hug, and because of that, and many other things, many other like occasions where this friend has been nice to me in ways that I'm sure they probably even didn't even think of as something spectacular. But I still remember that, and I remember those. And because of that, many times if they even do anything that irritates me, I just let it go. I just let it go because they've done some other things that are so like dear to my heart. So anyway, back to the story. So those are some of the things I experienced because of the crying situation, which was just horrific for me, but it was also scary. I had to start taking stock of things that were happening to me. Like I had to really sit down and start taking stock of these things. And I started realizing a few things. One, I would ask myself, okay, why do I feel sad? I don't know. That would be the answer. What do I know? I don't know. Is there something going on that is making me feel sad? I don't know. Is there something I dislike that I'm doing or that somebody is doing to me? I don't know. Is there something I like that can make me feel better? I don't know. Okay, what do I like? I don't know. How do I feel right now? I don't know. So do I feel anything right now? No, I feel numb. And I realized that I felt numb. I felt nothing, and it was horrible. It felt like death, but like I get like I guess if a person is dead, at least they know they're dead. So they're not supposed to feel anything. So this time it felt worse than death, if we can say it that way. Like felt worse than death because why would you be alive and feel nothing? I was numb. I was empty. I felt like there was a huge empty dark hole inside me. It was just horrible. I don't know how else to describe it. It was really, really horrible. And again, remember I wasn't talking to anyone about it. So I was feeling confused. I felt very alone. I was surrounded by people a lot, but I felt very, very alone. It was the worst thing. I think up till now, it was one of the worst times of my life. In fact, I can say I've experienced some horrible things, but I think that was the worst time of my life. Without exaggeration, it was the worst time of my life. I want to pause here. I want to go back to a couple of years ago, which was about 3 or 4 years ago. I mentioned earlier that I had been experiencing some of these symptoms for maybe like 5 years ish. So maybe like 3 or 4 years before the chronic burnout occurred, there was a friend I had that's a pseudo friend, as it turned out, that I had that was also a student in my school who was studying psychology. Okay, hear me out. Was studying psychology, and up to that point, it had never really occurred to me to talk to anyone about it. But at some point, we were talking. I don't know how we got on that subject, and I casually mentioned, I was like, sometimes I get feelings of depression, and the friend was like, no, 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 stop it. Why would you ever say that? Do you know what depression is? Don't ever say that. Like, don't say, no. And that's, it's a very common reaction in this awesome part of the world, this awesome continent, where people get so worried about saying negative things that when something is true, when something is real, when there's a reality and it's a negative reality, it becomes difficult for you to say it because they don't even want to hear anything negative because they think if you say it, then you are making it come true. You are going to run the risk of making that thing come true. So it's very difficult for you to even express yourself in the first place. But I don't get it. Like I understand why people can be like that, but they go to extremes. And so this person I feel like they were just in that space where they're like, no, 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 don't say anything negative to yourself because you don't want anything. Like they did not say it because you don't want it to happen to you, but they just said, don't say that because you don't know what depression is. As if I was saying it, as if anybody could ever say something like that about themselves just because. Right? You can't just wake up and say you are depressed or you feel something horrible on a lark. It doesn't happen that way. Like there has to be a reason for you to say something like that. And even if you're wrong, like I feel like if somebody were to talk to me about it, or even any normal person, no matter how you feel about somebody saying things like that, you should realize also that there's a reason they said it. And even if what they're feeling is not depression, even if they are wrong about it, maybe there's something else they feel that they interpret as depression. And maybe, even if you don't know how to handle it, maybe you can point them in the right direction, right? And when I realized that when I was telling this friend about it, in my thoughts, I was like, okay, maybe even if they cannot help me, maybe they'll be able to point me in the right direction or they'll be able to, tell me what to do about it because they're studying psychology, right? And I was shocked at their response. And yet, a part of me was not shocked because like I said, I'd always been the kind of person who preferred to solve my problems by myself. Because whenever I would tell somebody about it, they would either make things worse, they would not make things better, and they would make me feel horrible about it. And talking to this so called friend confirmed those feelings, those thoughts for me. And and that part of myself was like, you see, what did we say? Always keep things to yourself. And so when the chronic burnout actually happened like 2 to 3 years after, that was one of the main reasons I did not talk to anyone about it. Because that person had already reaffirmed for me that you do not talk to people about your problems. Okay? Again, I'm going to pause here and say there are friends and there are friends. And if you don't know how to help somebody who is going through something, especially if they come to you, then maybe you can point them in the right direction. At the very least, don't tell them, oh, don't say that. Don't ever try to shun somebody or shut a person down when they're trying to express themselves. If you don't know what to do about it, point them in the direction, like suggest to them maybe therapy or talking to someone else, right? Suggest that to them so that you know you've done your good deed. And then maybe help distract them with other things. All right? Or, just don't say anything. Don't say anything and just keep quiet. If that friend that I told had just kept quiet and not said anything, I would have appreciated it a lot more than the reaction they had and the things they said to me that day. Does that make sense? Of course, we're no longer friends. So, up yours. Anyway, back to the story. I had physical health troubles, like skin problems, and like my anxiety had always been there. But at that point, the anxiety was like it had increased exponentially. So where on a normal day the anxiety would feel just like I would have this sudden fear, sudden worry. That was how I'd always experienced it. At that point, the anxiety became such that my chest would feel tightened, as if there's something putting pressure on my chest and it was tightening and it was becoming smaller. Then I would also feel sometimes I would have these feelings like I would have palpitations, normal, like palpitations, like I could feel and almost hear my heart beating really fast. That would happen. I would break into a sweat. Sometimes I would feel really dizzy with the force of the, so something very similar to anxiety attacks. And yeah, so that was the kind of anxiety I was experiencing then. So it wasn't like the regular kind of anxiety. How did I get past the problems? Well, when I started examining myself and I started realizing that I did not feel anything, I started tracing things back to the last time I could feel things, the last time I could really, like, I could be honest with myself about what I felt. Because at this point, I had to be honest with myself. And even when I tried to be honest with myself, when I really like tried to listen to what my body was telling me, my body wasn't telling me anything. So I had to start thinking back to the last time I remembered that my body told me anything and that I listened. And I realized that it had been a very, very long time because for the longest time in my life, for the longest time, for years, I'm talking years and years now, I had not been listening to myself. And that was why my body was no longer talking to me. So I started realizing that if I was going to get anything, like even if I wasn't even trying to get anything, I just realized that I was going to stop. I told myself I was going to stop just ignoring myself and I was going to stop not listening to myself. And I was going to stop pretending I wasn't feeling things when I was feeling them because something told me instinctively that the reason I wasn't feeling anything anymore was because I used to pretend not to feel things when I felt them, when I used to feel them. I used to tell myself I wasn't feeling something that I actually felt. And I used to tell other people I was not feeling something that I actually felt. And that I was feeling something else other than what I felt because I felt that that was what they expected me to feel. Again, we're back to the camouflaging issue, right? So I told myself I was going to stop that feeling. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but instinctively that was what made sense to me. So from then on, I would try to ask myself whenever I would, like, I could be doing anything. I could be taking a walk, I could be in class, I could be studying, I could be talking to friends, and it would just occur to me to ask myself, okay, to come back and check with myself. What am I feeling in this moment? The answer could be I do not know. And I would say, okay, and I would just let it go like that. And then at a different point, I would say, okay, what am I feeling at this point? It got so that when things would happen to me or things would happen or I would hear about anything, I would just automatically check back with myself. Like it became an automatic thing after a while. And I would check back with myself and say, okay, how do I feel about this? What am I feeling in this moment? And even if it was something as simple as I feel hot, like that would feel like a win for me because at least I know that I feel hot. I feel that and I am able to admit that to myself. I feel cold. I feel uncomfortable. I don't know why I feel uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable. The way this person is smiling to me, I don't like it. I don't know what I don't like about it. Maybe I just don't like their smile. Maybe I don't like their face. Maybe I don't like their energy. I don't know what it is, but I feel uncomfortable. And I will not pretend that I feel comfortable with it. I'm going to, I don't know, maybe I'm going to walk away. Or maybe I'll just sit down here and still be present and not do anything. But I know in my head that I feel uncomfortable with it, right? If somebody makes a joke, for instance, I'm not going to pretend to laugh about that joke when I don't find it funny. I don't find it funny, so I'm not going to laugh. I am not going to laugh. And I'm going to tell myself I feel it's not funny. I may not tell people out loud. I may not say to that person, why would I? I may not tell people that, oh, that joke is not funny. Why are you laughing? I may not tell the person making the joke that your joke is not funny. It's actually a very stupid joke. Like, I will not say that. But in my head, to myself, I will tell myself that joke is not funny. And I'm not going to lie to myself that I find it funny, which was what I used to do in the past. Like, I would pretend outwardly to people that maybe a joke was funny when I actually did not think it was funny. But I would also tell myself that, yeah, of course, I think the joke is funny. Yeah, I think the joke is funny. Like imagine like lying to yourself and just how do you say that? Like I've forgotten the word for it. Like imagine just manipulating your own psyche like that. It does not make any sense, right? And it's like no wonder your body, like your psyche, will rebel after a time if you keep doing that to yourself. So that was where I started from. I started admitting the truth about the way I felt to myself. And over time, I'm talking months to years, I started getting a response from my body. I started seeing results. I started becoming not so numb after all. I started being able to feel things again. And it was beautiful. It was like I was coming back to life. It was like something inside me was coming back to life. And at the same time, I started realizing that I was feeling new things that I had never felt before, like comfort, like safety, like love. I remember the first time I actually felt. I know this must sound weird to some people, but I remember the first time I felt love. I didn't even know it was actually love, and I used to wonder, what is this feeling? What is this feeling? What is this feeling? And then after a while, it occurred to me. Like one day, it just occurred to me that, oh, that's the feeling of love. That is the feeling of love. And don't think, I don't want you to think it was because I fell in love with somebody or no, no, no. Your girl does not work that way. No, it was God. It was God that I felt the feeling of love for, which was great. So that was one of the first things. And then the second thing I did, I started like making choices for myself. Unlike before, when I allowed people make choices for me and I just followed the decisions people made for me for my life without investing myself in thinking about what I felt comfortable with, what I actually wanted. Like, what did I like? What did I want to do? Where do I want to go? Did I actually want to go to this party, or would I have preferred to stay home and just, things like that? And it started becoming, choices about more serious things in life. Like, that was when I actually rediscovered religion. I started learning actually. And from learning, I realized that there was something I wanted to do. So I started learning about Islam. I started learning about God and what my relationship with God is supposed to be. Where before I did not care about it. I did not care about it. And it just happened. Like, it just happened. How do you put it? Organically. It just happened organically. And I started learning and I started removing certain things that I was doing in my life that were not things that I believed God wanted me to do. I started stopping them one by one. And it helped me a lot because, again, like I said, first time I felt the feeling of love, it was in my dealing with God. First time I felt the feeling of euphoria, it was in my dealing with God. I was actually praying at the time and I felt this euphoric feeling. You cannot you cannot describe it to someone. Someone has to experience it themselves before they know what it is. But I felt it when it came to lots of things that are even bad for my emotional health and my physical health that I was doing. I stopped them because I realized God didn't want me to do those things. And when it came to the point when and I'm not saying that because I automatically discovered religion and all my bad feelings went away. Absolutely not. I still experienced the anxiety. I still experienced depression from time to time, but they were getting less and less frequent, and the intensity was reducing. That much I know. And obviously, I had something else to focus on, and it was a beautiful thing, and it was enriching my life. And I was learning new things, which I've always loved to do, to learn new things. And it felt like there was something bigger than me that I could live for. And it started answering some of my questions about what my purpose was, because I had those too. I had those questions about what my purpose was in this life, what I was doing, what was the point of it all. Things were hard. If things are hard for me to even like just getting through the day is so difficult. Why? What's the point in all of it? Like, what am I even doing here? I don't have a talent that I know of. I don't have a passion that I know of. I don't like being a vet doctor. I don't understand why I even am because I'm not even practicing. So I don't understand why I'm in this career. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. What, even if I were to practice this career, what link does it have with my real life, with anybody's real life? Like, what is the point? So he started answering some of those questions for me. And so that was one of the things I did. I started making choices for myself. And one of the huge choices I made for myself was learning about religion and, becoming somebody who identifies as a Muslim and living my life in accordance with what I believe God wants me, how I believe God wants me to live my life. And then, building a relationship with God. And that helped me a lot in so many ways in my life. Another thing that I did was I refused to do things that would make me uncomfortable. I refused to go to parties that would make me uncomfortable. I refused to deal with people that made me uncomfortable.